can detach from somebody naturally, but spiritually, if you never detach, then there's still hope that you can turn that situation around.
Hi everyone, I'm Lady Tracy Burton. I would like to take this time to invite you to our Sunday morning service, 9:30, our Tuesday night Bible study at 7 p.m. We're located at 2510 Congress Street. We would love to see you and your family come in and join us and help us lift up the Lord.
We have people in our lives, they've committed adultery, they've committed all kind of acts, sins against God and against us. And the expectation is that we remain faithful in spite of all of that. And so where are you tonight? What's your thought? How are you going to deal with it? How are you just going to walk away from something that could possibly become productive and fruitful? Or are you just going to, you know what, we'll deal with it the way it is and, allow it to happen however it happens? Is that the proper thing to say for a Christian, or is that the proper thing to do for a Christian? I think the example that Hosea is giving us tonight is, in spite of wherever the person you're in a relationship is, there's still hope that that person can change the landscape of their life, and there's a great possibility that the relationship could truly become fruitful and productive. In chapter 3, we pick up. Chapter 3 is a very climatic place because we pick up where there's a reconciliation of their love. So we've gone from the hardship, the havoc, the crazy part, to now we're picking it up where there's a chance for them. And so not only is there a chance for them, there's a chance for Israel, or the Israelites. Because he says that they're not going to have a prince. They're not going to have a king. God had tried the kingship. Up to this point, there were 6 kings that had been a part of this whole historical context. The kings oftentimes oppress the people. They oppress the poor. And so when we find Hosea coming into his own, Hosea is coming into a place where there's not really the prosperity of the nation is on decline. And so there was moments where they had great prosperity. But while they had prosperity, they did not treat God's people fairly. And so God is looking at all of this, all of these components. And so now we find there's some decline in the culture or into the economics of the nation. But even with the decline, the kings are still treating people harshly. They're still oppressing God's people. Remember, the poor matter to God. People who are marginalized matter to God. And so because they matter to God, God takes issue with the leadership here. And so this is when we begin to see the prophecy becoming critical, because there's talk or thought about the Messiah. There's talk about David, the king after God's own heart. And so now there's a shift in leadership, and God begins to prepare his nation or his people for his kind of leader. And so that's what, he's showing us here. But not only that, he's showing us the kind of person that we need to be, a Hosea. I don't know what it is that you're dealing with, a level of contempt the person in the relationship has caused in your life. But the reality is we play a role in being tolerant to a degree of some of these things that people are doing against us. It's not, we can't be quick to throw in a towel. We can't be quick to walk away, because it's building us up and having a level of patience that God had for us. The mercy he has for us, we have to display that to other people. The grace that he gives us, we have to give that to other people. If we never extend it, then how can we expect to have it? So that's where Hosea is. Hosea was like, you know what, I'm obedient. I don't want to be out the will of God. I want to stay in the will of God. If he's a prophet, then he's a servant of God. That's significant. That's significant when God begins to put you through trials and tribulations and pain and hardship and expect you in your obedience and your faithfulness to him to endure it and come out victorious. And so a lot of times when we ask ourselves, man, why am I going through all this hell? How did I end up with her? How did I end up with him? God, why did you bring me into this? I didn't sign up for this. You don't have to sign up for it. He signed you up for it. And if he signs you up for it, there's an expectation that you're going to go through the process and you're going to bear witness to who he is, even in a storm. Hosea is bearing witness to who God is through public humiliation, through public turmoil, through trials, to the unfaithfulness of a person he greatly loved. How I did everything for her. She wanted for nothing. Yet she does this to me? How? And so he doesn't do it for her, but he does it for God. How many of us are willing to set aside our agenda, our personal feelings, everything that we hold on to put God at the top or at the forefront of our existence? That's what the call is. That's what the prophet is saying. I'm doing this for God because I need people to understand the role and the significance that God plays in my life. Truth be told, if God had not had his hand on this man, he'd have cracked up. Literally, he might have killed somebody. Think about it. You visualize your wife, your woman, or your significant other with somebody else in their arms. And in a whim, you lose your mind and you go after this person. God had to have his hand on this brother because at no point did he have that thought. He patiently waited and anticipated a turnaround, the prayer, the endless possibilities of being in a fruitful, productive love affair once again with his soulmate. We all have those possibilities in our lives, but some of us are quick to want to walk away. Israel walked away from God. They alienated God. God didn't walk away from them. And God waited on the peripheral until they found their way, and he gave them an answer to their problem. Jesus becomes our answer. Jesus becomes our source. He began to use David to prepare the way, but ultimately, the setup was for us to find Jesus in the midst of our powerless situations. And so that's where we find our hope, in Jesus. But we see this man, Hosea, beginning to bear witness to what God can do and the expectations of God through storms and trials in life. And so we ask what happens. What happens is most of the time we chase after the love, the power, the things of the world. And when we get in that realm, y'all, we lose sight of the most important component, and that's him. And so we're constantly on the chase. We're constantly on the move. I got to get money. I got to get more stuff. I got to get here. I got to get there. And then before you know it, God is at the back instead of the forefront of our existence. And that's what we want to be mindful of. That's what we want to be cautious of. We never want to put ourselves in a position where we lose sight of the most important thing in our lives. He has to be the main ingredient, because without him, there's no flavor to our life. Without him, there's no real substance in our existence. We're just wallowing away. We're on a fast lane, but there's no direction on a fast lane. You're running on a full tank of gas, but at some point, you're going to run out of fuel. You're going to be on the roadside stall looking for somebody to tow you or bring you in. Don't lose sight of him, because if you keep him at the forefront, then even when you have those pitfalls or those issues, you still are able to grab on to him as your source and allow you to get through the confusion of your living. And so it doesn't say that Hosea had all of the issues that many of us have in terms of inward doubt. The prophet just seemed like he stood there in a prayerful place, in a place of knowing that ultimately God was going to fix it all for him. So he never allowed the devil to take him out of the will of God, or allow the world to remove him from that central place. That's believing that God ultimately was going to fix this crazy situation. He did like most of us need to do. He focused on his faith and his family. Remember, he has 3 kids. The kids had to eat. Things had to be done around the house. So we can't worry about what Gomer's doing, because Gomer's going to do her. But at the end of the day, I still have to sustain what I'm responsible for. But oftentimes what happens with a lot of us, we look at Gomer, and because Gomer's doing some crazy stuff, then we say, you know what? She's doing it, I'm going to do it. And then you leave some things undone. You leave some possibilities where your kids go astray. And then before you know it, Gomer's a trip, you're a trip, the kids are acting up in school, you're going for parent conference, and then they were like, you know what? This family is out of whack. There's nothing we can do for this family. There's no normacy. Somebody has to remain strong and faithful, even in the tug of war or the drudgery of their situation. But we want to give up. We want to quit. We want to throw in a towel. But now it's not the time. And so Gomer was on her own for a while. And so when we get to chapter 3, the proposition is, go get Gomer. She's for sale now. And they give us the details of the sale. But I believe this, y'all. If my wife was living astray or running amok, and I'm taking care of my kids, and I love my wife unconditionally, I don't care what the price is. I'm going to get her. And so the price is not significant. The fact of the matter is they held up as a ransom. And he had to go and get her, because why? He loved the woman in spite of what she did, in spite of her issues. He went and got her because he believed in the fact that God was ultimately going to reconcile their relationship. And he goes and get them. And that's what God does with us, y'all. We've sinned. We've committed adultery against God. And we ask, what is the effect when we cheat on God? When we cheat on God, we put God in a situation where, he has to just say, you know what, am I going to leave him out there in the show without a life jacket? Or am I going to go and grab them? God never left any of us out there stranded without throwing us a life preserver. And so because he never did that to us, then why do we do that to our loved ones, or people that we're in covenant relationship with? You see where we're going? You see where we're going? He aids us in distress. And so Hosea goes and pays the price and brings his girl home, knowing that I lost her in the natural, but spiritually, I never detached or disconnected from her. That's when most relationships run amok. You can detach from somebody naturally, but spiritually, if you never detach, then there's still hope that you can turn that situation around. You look at the church, not just this church, but churches all around the city, all around the world. And oftentimes I talk to pastors, I'm like, how many people leave, unannounced and, unintentional and never come back? Or how many people leave and then come back? In the vast majority, experiences is people leave, but for whatever reasons, they come back. And I'm under the thought now that those people may detach in the natural, but spiritually, they never detach. And because they never detach spiritually, they often find themselves back in the fellowship. And so when we are dealing with some adulterous type situations, the caution here is, I don't need to detach from that spiritually. Physically, naturally, I can take a break. But spiritually, I have to have an inward belief or hope that at some point, redemption does take place. And that's what he gives us, redemption. He gives us the ability to buy back what we lost. He paid the price for us. Hosea paid the price for Gomer. In my wild imagination, when he got his boo, he cleaned up, he brought her home, fixed her a nice fine dinner. They turned on some music, and they had a great time. The past was the past. Let's look at now, and let's look at what's ahead. That's when you're growing spiritually. When you can forget about the tuggle and the strain of the past, and you can focus on now and what's ahead. That's the caution. That's how we grow. That's how we demonstrate to God that we've grown. And so God uses Hosea to show us that in spite of what you're going through, adultery, contempt, it doesn't matter. You have to have a heart to forgive and love in spite of. And the parallel is, Hosea was going through, and so was God. God did not abandon his people. They worshiped Baal. They did things that were contrary, outside the will of God. Yet God kept his hands on them with an expected belief that at some point they shall be delivered and set free. That's what you and I have to look forward to. The effect is we've cheated on God. The effect is, we've walked away from God when God was there for us. God got us through 1,000,001 things, and yet we take them lightly and for granted pretty much on a daily basis. And God is still there for us, allowing us to stand in our right mind, allowing us to live a life of some level of a peaceful state. Yet we demonstrate to him that, you know what, God, I'm not going to be too faithful to you right now because I got to go get this money. I got some other stuff that's more appealing or attractive than you right now. Yet God still stands in the batter's box, being faithful to each of us, expecting our return at home plate. But how many of us are willing to render that same level of love? How many of us are willing to commit to God everything that we have, uncompromised, like the prophet Hosea? Hosea stood in public judgment. He had a hoochie mama, a girl that was vicariously living a free life amongst the men in the community. She was possibly sleeping with the neighbor, the homeboy down the street, whoever, whenever, however. She had an appetite for something far more than he can give her. But in his heart, he knew that he hadn't lost her. In his heart, he knew that the best was yet to come. And that's what God has for us, knowing that the best has yet to come. But how many of us really are going to surrender our lives to God and not deliberately cheat on God and expect great things to happen? When we meet her in chapter 3 and they reconcile, I can only imagine great things begin to happen in their situation. Wherever we are, when we pick up with God and decide, I'm not going to cheat any longer, I can only imagine things begin to add up in our lives. What are those things? Finances, great relationships, a productive existence, strong mental stability, great health inwardly and outwardly, peace all around you. That's what happens when we decide to not cheat on God. Whatever it is you desire, you can get it. But you have to make up in your mind that He's going to be the preeminent force in your life. Hosea shows us that. God shows us that in how He handles the Israelites and Judah. And so, what decision will we make? Will we continue to cheat on God? Or will we ultimately turn away from our sinful nature and give God our all? That's the call tonight. That's the call. Because if you're like me, I don't want to live a life of confusion. I don't want to live a life of chaos. I don't want to be in a relationship or in situations where, people are committing adultery or committing harm against me. I've gotten to a place, y'all, where if I see negative people, I walk totally away from negative people. I don't even want to have time with people who don't feel like we can share pleasantries or we're not on the same accord. At 43 years old, I've decided that I'm not going to give a whole lot of time to that anymore. If we're friends, I'm going to give you my all. If we're business, I'm going to give you my all. Whatever it is, I'm going to give you my all. But if I feel like there's some type of tension, or if you don't, that's it. You don't have to, that's it. I'm done. We're okay. But the reality is, a lot of people we're in relationship with, there's some leeway for us to do great things. We got to give them some level of grace. We got to extend them some mercy, because the core of it is, if we never give them an opportunity to wrestle or deal with their craziness, then we never give them an opportunity to really grow up and see the real potential of what you bring to the table. Gomer had to go through all of that. Because why? It goes back to, I was with him. He seemed like he loved me, but at some point, we disconnected. Well, I was with him, the love wasn't there, but it seemed like the physical part was good. But then after that, there was nothing else. I was with him, and we had some balance, but at some point, we just stopped talking. But when I was with Hosea, the physical wasn't always there, but the mental, the encouragement, the constantly reassurance of, I'm special. I can reach for the stars. I saw something in Hosea that I didn't see in the other ones. And so because she goes through the turmoil and all of the foolishness, she begins to have a greater appreciation for Hosea. And so y'all, everything we've been through, the ups, the downs, the whatever, we come back to the fact that we should have a greater appreciation for God, because God remains faithful in our lives. The devil sold you a bag of goods, and he took them back. Now you're broke. The devil have you running all around town. And you done stacked it up, but now it's gone. God takes you on another course. You don't have to run as hard, but the inward peace is far better. The relationships are far more productive because now you have a greater appreciation for who he is. You don't think God in his wisdom knew that I can let them go and let them find out for themselves. But when they come back, I'll be sitting at home plate waiting for them. And we can pick up where we left off. And I won't remind them of their past. I won't remind them of the fact that they sinned against me. I will encourage and build them up to give them eternal life and hope through Jesus Christ. Amen? Amen.
I like House of Hope because I can feel what's being said. I can feel the Lord speaking through Pastor Burton. And I also love it because it's personable, and I get a lot out of it.
It keeps me going. It keeps me focused. It keeps me hopeful because I know God is in control. And wherever God leads me, that's where I am, and he led me here. He always leads me here. It's because I get it.
Well, I first started off coming because it was my mother's church, and after she passed, I came back home and I said I wasn't moving my kids to somewhere I want to go. They enjoyed it here, and I've come to love it. Pastor's always straightforward. He's very transparent. Things that happen in his life, you know, he talks to us about it. He comes out in his sermons and what have you, and he relates real life things to what's going on. So he's able to not only catch those who are deeply rooted in the Word, but he can also catch those who are babies, who are just beginners. I'm not a beginner, but I'm not where he's at on his level. So he makes sure that I understand everything. So, and I love it. I just love it.
I like the House of Hope. I like the message. It's a real simple yet deep message. I like the intimacy of the whole church experience here. It's not a real big church. You actually get a lot of hands-on time with Pastor Burton. And I've just enjoyed my experience since I've been here.
Hi everyone, I'm Lady Tracy Burton. I would like to take this time to invite you to our Sunday morning service, 9:30, our Tuesday night Bible study at 7 p.m. We're located at 2510 Congress Street. We would love to see you and your family come in and join us and help us lift up the Lord.